folks have given us so far, and really just some guidance and the like of what some of the best directions would be and so forth. And I'm not going to say a whole lot more than that. We're really appreciative of your support and time here in a big way, and we've really had quite a bit occurring, and so to that end, I will turn it over to Lou, who can talk about updates on activities since February 7th.
Okay, thank you, Todd. So yeah, we're going to, as you can see on the agenda, we're going to look at things that have happened in the last 90 days or so, give everybody a sense of some of the TA and training projects that we've been putting on or are planning to come up. Maureen's going to give us a little bit of a communication update. Hopefully we'll have some discussion with some that are on the front burner for us right now. So Anne, we could head to the slides. We'll proceed. All right. Very good. So let's go to the next one. Keep going. All right. We're not going to give you background again on the MHTTC, except to remind everybody of the goals. We are expected to use evidence-based practices. We're focused on workforce. We are intending to build regional and national alliances, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Most importantly, we're expected to provide free training and technical assistance to providers in our region. As you'll remember, this is a 5-year cooperative agreement with SAMHSA. We're actually 9 months old now. We started on August 15th of 2018, so entering our 2nd year pretty soon. And the project period, as you can see, ends in 2023. And we started providing services about 6 months ago, mid-November. Since last time, a couple of things have happened. We did submit a year 2 continuation application, which has been approved. So we're good to go in year 2. We've been working on looking at needs in our region and developing new projects, which we'll talk about. We've been going to major conferences in the region, or will be going to some of those, both on the school-based front and also for general MHTTC. And of course, the school-based Mental Health National Learning Collaborative has kicked off. We've been to that meeting, and there's a lot going on there, which Sarah will update us on. And then I just wanted to, I'll talk a little bit about the NCO, our National Coordinating Office, and some of the things that are going on with them. We're actually having a directors meeting this afternoon to kind of talk about the issue of coordination among the various TTCs across the country and with the NCO and all of SAMHSA's other TA centers. Sarah, do you want to run through these, or would you like me to do that? It doesn't matter to me.
I can go ahead and do it. Okay,
great.
I noticed there's a slide missing too, so I want to make sure I talk about it, even though that might not
all
be
right.
For it.
Very
so,
good.
So the biggest project we've been working on is we helped bring 28 participants from all 6 of our states in the region to a 2-day training kickoff on advancing comprehensive school mental health framework. So we were all trained, kind of a train the trainer model on the 8 modules for implementing comprehensive school mental health services. That official training will go live this summer. everybody in attendance will be able to advance that throughout each state or region. We also have 5 follow-up virtual
the website.
So 2 have been completed and 3 more are scheduled to be completed this summer. Let me just, some of the completed projects that, other completed projects that we've done in the last 3 months, we contributed to a national SAMHSA publication titled After School Tragedy, Readiness, Response, Recovery, and Resources. We also, in tandem to that, created a state-specific suicide prevention school resource guide. We provided introductory training in youth mental health first aid to 159 school safety officers. We have relationships with and connections with subject matter experts in suicide prevention, social emotional learning, youth mental health first aid, and cognitive behavioral therapy. And we've exhibited at 6 state school mental health conferences in 5 states and reached over 2,500 attendees. All right, if you want to advance. So those are the conferences that we've done. We have done 5 or 6 of the 7, and the next one, the last one of to meet all 6 states, will be in Michigan in June. Oh, sorry, Ann, I missed a slide. Next, one more. Sorry, thank you. And then upcoming projects, we have a 3-part suicide prevention in schools happening this summer through June and July. We're also supporting the Growing School Mental Health Summit in Wisconsin and bringing a national trainer and the SHAPE system creator, Dr. Elizabeth Connors, to work with 10 schools to help them prepare to implement the SHAPE system, which is an evaluation system for health and mental health services. We are doing a full-day youth mental health first aid training with 30 school safety officers in Indiana, and we are currently working on putting together a train-the-trainer event for with other regional MHTTCs to be able to train 16 mental health first aid trainers so that we can provide that training free of charge to the regions that we serve. That's what I have.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. Hey, Ann, there may be a glitch. Some people have not been able to get on. Bob Sheehan emailed me and said that, oh, he figured it out, corrected the problem, and he's on. Good. All right. Any questions for Sarah? Anybody have about mental health stuff before we move on? Okay. I wanted to provide you with a little bit of kind of an update on some of the projects that we've been involved with, and so we've categorized them: exhibiting and training and intensive TA, just so you get a flavor of some of the things that we're doing. This is not all the things that are on our list, but so we, not only with the school-based mental health, but we've been exhibiting, will be exhibiting at, again, major conferences in many of our regional states. One of the earliest ones was at the Indiana Primary Care and Behavioral Health Integration Conference. I'll be, because I'm the Ohio State Program Manager, I'll be at 2 conferences in Ohio, and we'll be basically promoting all of our TTCs, prevention and mental health and addiction, along with the OTN funding that we have. Next slide. We're also, as part of our work plan, some of you may remember that we are trying to do a Change Leader Academy in our 6 states. Some of you know that this is related to our focus area. Our focus area is a process improvement in behavioral health. And so we go out and do a Change Leader Academy and work with the NIATEX project to help providers use this approach in making change in their agency. So I believe Jean was actually at one in Mount Pleasant, Michigan yesterday. How did that go, Jean?
It was great. We had 40 providers there. We had a wonderful day. And, really great participation. Really great group of people.
Good. So you can see we're going to be in Indiana. We had one scheduled in Illinois, and we didn't have enough people signed up, I think, but we're going to re-advertise that. It was going to be for youth working in schools. We want to do more of this as best. And the other thing we have want to offer is that if any of the advisory board would like to come to a Change Leader Academy, we're actually doing one in Madison, and I'm blanking on the date. Jean or Maureen, do you know when that is?
June 13th. This is Scott.
Scott, June 13th?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So if you're interested in learning more about that or coming to a Change Leader Academy, please let me know or Ann, and we can get you the information. All right. The other obvious thing we're doing is we're doing training. As you know, we are trying to not necessarily do one-shot trainings, and we're moving away from that and trying to do more intensive kinds of things, but we are doing skills training workshops for people. And so these are some of the things that we've done so far. Serrato, who is our intensive technical assistance specialist, did a cultural elements training or organized that and had folks come in from the National Center. We've done co-occurring disorders training, which was, again, brought to us as a need by the Illinois Association of Behavioral Health, so we're probably going to be doing more of that. We've also been doing webinar series when it makes sense, when there's when we want to do some awareness and training at the same time. We did a three-part series, or co-funded a series with the Illinois Primary Care Association, which was actually the presentation was done by somebody from the National Council. We're also providing some funding in Ohio to do a trauma-informed care, a one-day session that's coming up on June 25th. Actually, the presenters are actually from Hazelden. And then another example of some things that we're working on, we've been working with and continue to work with the New England MHTTC. We're actually going to be doing a recovery-oriented trauma-informed care webinar series in our 6 states and their 6 states. And you can see the dates here. The webinar series is June 5th, 19th, and July 10th. It's open to any provider in our region, individual for that matter. And then it's going to be followed up by a learning collaborative where agencies will be able to apply collaborative, and the focus will be on developing a strategic plan for how to make their agency more trauma informed or trauma sensitive. So that'll involve a series of 4 other kind of didactic virtual sessions and then 4 coaching sessions. And it'll probably be 6 to 12 providers in our region, in the Great Lakes region, and 6 to 12 in the New England MHTTC. So we've been enjoying working with them because that's one of their specialty areas. And then if you go sort of all the way to the right, I suppose, is we do a number of intensive learning collaboratives, and some are more intensive than others. The one that we're in the midst of right now is in Ohio. On May 16th, we did a one-day session for 10 providers in Columbus who applied. There were like 29 applications, and Dr. Hoagie from Yale is doing a whole full-day session, and then he's going to be coaching the providers in working on a workforce recruitment and retention plan. And you can see here that that's going to run through November. And again, I mentioned this earlier, but as an intensive project, we're doing this trauma-informed care learning collaborative, which will run from July through September. Alfredo, again, who was working on the cultural elements session that was done in Ohio is also putting together, or has been putting together, a master series in cultural competence, which will, and he's working with other PCs throughout the country and then the National Hispanic and Latino Center on this. Individuals will be able to become certified and go out and do training in this area. Alfredo's also available right now, and as we've described in our recent newsletter, that he's available to go out and train on cultural elements in our region. So, and then just one other example, we are working on a contract with the University of Minnesota, who do an evidence-based practice called illness management and recovery. This is going to be an intensive session for practitioners who work with adults with serious mental illness. This one is very intensive because it's a 13-month program. There'll be a 2-day training session in Milwaukee, and then there'll be 6 virtual coaching sessions every month as people learn how to do this. A face-to-face, and then another 6 or 7 months of intensive, so that people will develop the skills to be able to implement IMR in their agency to fidelity. So this one is very intensive, as I said before. So next slide. If you've seen our recent newsletter, we've been trying to define some of the things that we use, terms we use all the time. Or if people get confused about training versus technical assistance. And so this is the definition that we've been using for a little while. It was developed by Addiction Technology Center work group. But really, it's the difference between training and this is that it's really a sort of a negotiated series of activities designed to reach some sort of outcome. So just as we are, again, working with an agency to develop a plan to improve their course, it's more of a long-term information sharing using expertise, skill building, and transmission of knowledge over time. So that those agencies can, increase their retention rate and lower their number of people who leave. Which, again, we've been doing a little bit of everything so far, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Some of the issues around that. Okay, next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Maureen, and she'll provide us with her regular featured communication update.
Thanks, Lou. And thanks, everyone, for joining us today. I'm going to rely on my colleague Anne to advance the slides as we go along. And I'm just waiting for the slides to show up on my screen. Sorry for the delay. Thank you. So when you all joined us in our last meeting, which I think was in February, the MHTTC news website had just launched, and we since then have added a lot of content. We have had 2 issues of our newsletter, and as we're building our mailing list, you'll see our number of recipients is growing. The open rate for both of our issues is good by industry standards. People who receive our newsletter open it and read the content. Right now, we're sending our newsletter out on a quarterly basis, but we're thinking about returning to a monthly delivery with the start of our new grant year, which will begin in October 2019. And as always, we welcome feedback from those of you in the community that are receiving our newsletter. We really like to know what you find most useful in terms of content and also scheduling of the delivery. We are using social media regularly. We tweet daily. We have a growing list of followers. We're happy to see that. Since we launched, I think was February of 2019, and we're seeing regular 10% increase in our Twitter followers each month. We're hoping to improve on that. Our email list is also slowly growing, and this summer we're going to be doing some targeted activities to build our mailing list. We didn't want to start out with cold call emails to people, lists that we received from other sources. We really wanted people to learn about us and choose to the mailing list. But we find that we could use some help from our colleagues, and a question for all of you today is if you'd be willing to send an email out to your list announcing that the Great Lakes MHTTC is up and running and inviting them to join the mailing list or sign up for our newsletter. If you're interested in that, we can provide you with a sample template language to use in an email. So just let us know after the call if that's something you're interested in. We also have some marketing materials that we can provide to you if you'd like to have copies of our trifold brochure that describes the school-based supplement. We can send copies of those, as well as flyers that you can have available to distribute in your offices or at any events where you might be exhibiting. And back to exhibiting, this is, I think I showed this at our last meeting. We have a nice display that we can use interchangeably if we're going to be presenting for just one of our programs or for all three. So be sure and keep us informed of events coming up in your region that we can participate in, where we can help increase awareness of who we are and what we do. And that's all that I have for our presentation today.
Does anybody have any questions for Maureen? Suggestions?
Maureen, this is Bob Sheehan from Michigan. Rather than even sending you an email, go ahead and send me those flyers. Those are ideal, as well as the template for letting our members know about the newsletter.
Thanks so much. We'll do that right away this afternoon.
This is Mark Hurst from Ohio. Same for Ohio.
Thanks, Mark. We'll get that out to you right away as well. I could probably start with sending maybe 50 to 100 copies of each item.
That'd be great. Yes.
Okay. So now we get to the part that I like best is the advising. Since you are the advisory board, lest you think that everything is going 100% swimmingly, we do have some issues and we need your help. So I would say that at this point, you know, I have 3 questions here today so we can kind of wrestle with, but basically we need to do a better job of reaching behavioral health providers in our region. That's just a fact. We really do want to build our mailing list. We want our newsletter to get out to people. We think that there's a lot of good training and technical assistance that's available, not only with us, but through our network. Again, we're not trying to duplicate what others are doing, but we're trying to meet needs in our region as we find out about them. So this particular question, you know, how can we reach more behavioral health providers? How can we engage providers into not only reading our newsletter, but thinking about us as a go-to kind of place for developing a customized training or technical assistance effort? So that's the question. There's obviously, as you all know, we have a subcontract in 5 of our 6 states with provider associations, and you know who they are, and they don't necessarily represent all providers in the state. So we're asking them to, you know, help with their mailing lists and everything, but we also need some other ideas about how we can sort of reach out further. Anybody have any Any ideas for us?
Hey, this is Don Tavius with the WACBA. We can send out to the Ohio Council, send it over to Teresa, anything that you have. I know that Dr. Hurst is on, and, Ohio Mosque can also send it in order to kind of help provide individuals or provider agencies with access to what's available to them. I think the other piece, too, is we send out everything that we get from you all through our UTTN that has over 5,000 various provider agencies, elected officials. I mean, it has a whole gamut of the behavioral health continuum on that listserv. And so, I think for us, we're doing as much as we can to engage. One of the problems and the difficulties that we have experienced, and I think I talked about this with Courtney, from previously, there's so much change and transition and movement happening within our system, at least in Ohio, that I know for a fact that there are some provider agencies who are just trying to do their day-to-day operations, let alone pull away staff for training opportunities. And so it's figuring out what's the best tools that can help them do their jobs better. But it seems as though there's so many things happening that while we are engaging, we may not necessarily have the capacity to, at least those provider agencies may not have the capacity to let go of staff to be a part of some of these opportunities. And so I don't want us to feel like our engagement is not working. I just think that there's multiple layers within,
Right.
getting them from getting engaged, getting the information, and then releasing staff to be a part of those meetings.
I appreciate that, Don Tavius. I actually had a conversation with Maureen this morning about, the idea of actually doing a change project with this, since that's our specialty at our center. So we talked about the possibility of working with you, the 5 provider associations, as part of our change team to sort of set a goal, reach an aim, and do the process basically. So you'll probably all be hearing from us next week pretty soon about how we might be able to do this. It shouldn't involve a whole lot of your time, but I think it kind of makes sense at this point. So,
Hey, Don Tavius, this is Todd Molfinter, and I was in Ohio on Tuesday, actually
Okay.
at 180 in Worcester.
Mm-hmm.
People in the crowd were talking a lot about how your recent initiative, I can't remember the exact name of it, where I don't want to say re-engineering, but that's not the right one, right term, is really, the providers it's taking a lot for them to adjust to that. And I realize that's been in place, like 7 or 8 months now, but I just wonder if there's anything to help them, get through that at all.
So Todd, are you talking about BH redesign?
Yes,
Okay.
Exactly what I'm talking
Actually, that question may be better suited for, the amazing Dr. Hurst on the line.
I didn't know the amazing Dr. Hurst was on. Okay,
Yeah.
Great. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, but yeah, Dr. Hurst.
I'll just take the name part, not the amazing part. So, no, it has been a process in terms of the redesign. So there have been several steps that have been taken with this. Probably the most disruptive was the transition from fee-for-service Medicaid to managed care Medicaid for reimbursement of outpatient psychiatric services, July 1 of 2018.
Right.
That is stabilizing at this point. The work is not totally done with it. There have been a lot of webinars and all kinds of technical assistance that has occurred as part of that. Retrospectively, it may have been better to not only have Medicaid in our department be part of that, but also to have outside third party, such as the TACC be part of that. But, the horse is kind of out of the barn. So I think things are starting to settle down with that a little bit at this point. But I think Don Tavius and you, Todd, hit it right on the head, where people have been so engrossed with this that doing anything beyond maintaining the financial viability of your organization and providing care for patients has been a lot to ask. Now we're starting to see some change with this, and I think, you know, the most recent example of you folks coming and doing the workforce training last week was very well received, and the fact that we had 29 applicants was actually a little bit surprising to me. So I think that's showing that people are starting to realize we have to move on with other things also here. But we're not done with the redesign. There's still a lot of work to be done with it. So
You know,
I feel like I kind of talked around the issue there, but it's a real issue. And I don't think it's unique to Ohio. You know, maintaining productivity, maintaining financial viability, not-for-profits that are on the cusp of financial viability at any time, even excusing your staff for a few hours can affect your bottom line to a point where it's really difficult. And you know, I think we need to think about that as an organization, about how we can provide the technical assistance and not have it be too much of a financial imposition on the organization, because just the lost productivity can be a financial imposition sometimes.
You know, and Dr. Hurst, I just want to add, you know, we had the Matrix 1.0 training here, and it was what I believe it was a great success. I mean, we're doing the Matrix 2.0. We have individuals who are signing up for, obviously, the second question is suicide prevention activities. We have a lot of boards that are working with provider agencies and their suicide prevention task forces to do a lot of work. And we are now next week having our first MHTTC suicide prevention training with Hazelton and Betty Ford Foundation. The following month we have the trauma-informed care. Let alone between both of those, we have the opiate conference that provider agencies are going to be coming to. So I guess what I want to say is that there's so many things that we're doing, at least in Ohio. I'm speaking about Ohio. At least what we're doing here is just we're providing a lot of opportunities for provider agencies to get involved, to look at best practices, to look at their system of care. And I don't want us to feel like we're not doing enough or we're not reaching audiences, because I feel like we are. I mean, and there's interest in what we're providing. Is just figuring out the best strategy for these provider agencies to not get overwhelmed with all these opportunities.
Yep. Okay, I appreciate that. Why don't we move on to sort of a related topic? Is we'll skip suicide prevention just for a second and go to the third bullet, which is, again, we have been providing a mix, I think, of learning collaboratives, which are very intensive, reach 25 or so people or less. It's more agency focused as opposed to individual practitioner. And then we also have been doing some more what we'd call skills training workshops, motivational interviewing and screening and brief intervention, co-occurring disorders, and when and where it makes sense, we've tried to link that to coaching to provide a little more so that it's not a one and done kind of thing, which we're, again, as we know, doesn't change behavior. However, the bottom line for us is that we still are a SAMHSA grantee, and we still have to collect data, and we still have to produce GIPRA numbers, unfortunately. And so the more learning collaboratives we do, sort of the fewer GIPRA numbers we get. And so if I was simply thinking about the numbers, I would say, okay, well, for the rest of the year and year two, we're just going to do skills training workshops and have 50 people per pop, because, we might be able to meet our targets that way, sort of thing. Now, I'm certainly not a person that's about numbers. But, again, I think the difficulty for me as co-director is that, again, we're somewhat expected to do everything, reach every audience, cover all the fronts, and yet we have to prioritize. And so, and it may not be a and or sort of thing, but are we beholden to agencies or individual practitioners, we are about workforce improvement. So, or should we just continue on the way we're going and try to meet needs where we see they are? I know there's no good answers to this, but I just raised it as a question. It's something I wrestle with as far as what we do moving forward.
Lou, this is Mark again. I'm wondering if there's any match between the work that you're doing and the federal block grant funding that we receive. If you might be able to provide some technical assistance in terms of, okay, so here are your priorities for suicide. Here are some potential priorities for suicide prevention activity. You have federal block grant in this amount. Could you consider apportioning this amount? And that would, of course, be working with the state behavioral health authority in addition to agencies and all. But, to provide some more sustainability and aspects where it would be less onerous financially for organizations to do the GIPRA and things of that nature.
Right. No, I think that's a good idea. And I have, we've been trying to reach out to state behavioral health authorities, and we've talked to just about everybody in states where some states there's some turnover that we have some issues with. But as an example, I'll tell you what I've been trying to do. When we did our needs assessment, we tried to assess needs based on different populations, which is sort of how the block grant, when you have to write your block grant application and dole out your dollars and things, there's children with SED, and there's adults with serious mental illness, and there's young adults with first episode psychosis, older adults. There's a whole, slew of populations. And so, rightly or wrongly, that's kind of how we assess needs when we ran our survey. And so one of the top priorities was this, services for first episode psychosis, right? And every state has a mandate from SAMHSA in their block grant to provide first episode psychosis programs. And so I have reached out I've managed to talk to, I think, 4 people out of 6 states who are the contacts for the block grant and who run those programs basically or oversee those programs. And, it's been really helpful. There are needs there. And I think there are needs that we can fill. We don't have enough money to sort of say, we'll help you field another 5 teams or something. But we have a couple of, as you know, in Ohio, NeoMed, Northeast Ohio Medical Center, does training and technical assistance for your 11 or 12 programs in Ohio. There are a number of other states in our region that have 1 or 2 programs. They have needs that perhaps NeoMed could fill, or, and so we're talking to them about doing a webinar series, maybe working with supervisors. So I think there's a lot of promise there. And again, to sort of help stretch or augment, block grant dollars, and to provide some training and TA and support to state staff too. So I don't know if that was helpful or not, as sort of an example, but again, there's a lot to do for sure.
Yeah, no, that is helpful, and I think the first episode psychosis is a great example of that. And I'm sure NeoMed would have an interest in helping out other states, and we'd have an interest in other states helping pay for their services financially, so we could use more of our block grant funding to go directly to the program.
That's right, because you're funding them with block grant dollars. They're one of the remaining grant-funded TA centers in Ohio. Yeah. So that's another thing that I think is expected of us is sort of the connectivity among the TA centers that are out there. We don't want to, we want to connect and use resources in our region if we can. And if we don't have any resources in our region, we want to go to perhaps another TTC or region that has those resources, and again, work together. But
hey Lou, let me ask a basic question. If you could, looking at when you look at the GIPRA and how many we have already surveys we received back, are we on course or have we exceeded the benchmark? Where are we, at least within the first year?
We are at about 10% where we projected we should be. And some of that I think is going to be fixed because we have adopted, this new approach to how we get GIPRA, get people to fill out the GIPRA, that we're providing the QR code. And before they leave the room, we're barring the doors and saying, please get your phone out and do the survey now.
Yeah.
We'll let you leave. So that has helped.
Okay.
But I would say that, I think our target is like 1,600 for the year of, actual completed surveys. And I think we have, it's 160 to 200 or so. And that's just because, in some of the trainings, and I wouldn't say it's Ohio necessarily, but you can have 130 people in the room at the Matrix, 1.0 training, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when people go home and they're asked, we send an email out to them, we get 6 people who do the survey, right?
Got it.
So that's really what has happened. I don't think it's for lack of trying or effort, but it's just a matter of we had to change our ways and change our practices and realize that this is an important part of what we do. And people want to help. You need to help us, because if we don't reach our GIPRA numbers, we might not be here next year.
So expect us to at both our regional meetings, the ones happening next week and one in June, for there to be a lot of GIPRA respondents from Ohio.
Good. So I love it. Okay, and I'm sure for Dr. Hurst, this is something that your department wrestles with too. With all the opioid money and whatever, there's all sorts of GIPRA obligations and things. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay. The other issue is that there is a tremendous focus on, as we said, suicide prevention, and they're all trying to do some things. I know Sarah, who is our school-based mental health person, is working on a suicide prevention webinar series. Dontavius, you've got something going that's coming up with Hazelden. And again, Todd and I have been involved, in Gene, with a small group of people, because there's so much focus on the intersection of like opioid use and suicide. So again, it's a huge area. There's a couple of big national TA centers, around this issue. And again, I guess as co-director of the MHTTC, it's hard for me to wrap my hands around sort of, okay, where to start with this. The audience makes a difference. The the intensity of what we do makes a difference, but what is the need out there? And again, because I think we're getting a lot of push from SAMHSA and others, because this, the suicide rates continue to go up. And again, it's the question of we can do awareness webinars until the cows come home, or we can train clinicians to be better at screening and assessment. Or we could train peer support specialists in emergency rooms on QPR about how to at least have a conversation about it. So it's, again, it's another sort of quandary for me about what we need, where should we start? And in lieu of all that, we simply do something.
So Lou, there's, at least in Ohio, there's 2 things that we actually are putting on as our next iteration, second year plan. We sit on the first responders, and Dr. Hurst can probably talk about this too. We sit on the first responders committee, and one of the things that is very evident in Ohio is that and I think really across the country, there really isn't a focus on first responders and suicide. We have a focus here in Ohio because we saw the need, but I think as we continually go down and build out a system of care for first responders, that is an area that I think would be pretty I don't know what other states are doing, but it'll be pretty unique to see what other states are doing as it relates to first responders and suicide. The other piece that I think is critical is data. Here we have at AWACBA, we have a committee to address suicide committee or committee to address suicide. And one of the things we just brought in the Department of Health to talk about how do you pull data and to get localized information regarding suicides in communities. But there were a lot of boards, task forces, provider agencies who just don't know that data was even available, let alone pulling it down and localizing it for their communities. And so I think a data discussion, and again, every state is different, I get that, but something related to how do you even see how your communities are impacted as it relates to suicide, really goes far in beginning to figure out, one, what's the need, what's the populations that are being impacted, and then two, how can we really develop next steps to target and tailor our supports for those communities. And so just those two things are on our list of kind of next steps for trainings and opportunities and engagement within the MHTTC space that we're in. So.
Okay, thanks. Is there anybody from another state that has any ideas for us about suicide prevention, where we ought to start with this, or?
So this is Bob Sheehan from Michigan, Lou. Your timing is perfect. There's a new coalition. There's a number of statewide coalitions on suicide prevention, but they're all wanting to congeal now to work more closely together. Just this morning, I spent time with them. What's unique about it, it's also a mix of not only practitioners and school-based folks, but also corporations are getting more and more concerned. I'm trying to think how to play this out. Lou, if I brought this group together on a conference call, would you or whoever on your staff be willing to kind of help them think through how you could play a role in that work?
Certainly, sure.
Could I work through you to do that, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, because I can go get a hold of Gene too if that's appropriate. Just let me know.
Yeah, we can take it back to our crew and see who else might want to be involved in that. I think that would be great.
For Gene's benefit, Gene, I'm not trying to ignore you. These folks just called me this morning.
What was that, Bob?
Folks just called me. You might wonder, why am I bringing it up here? I haven't talked to you. They just called me this morning, so the timing was ideal.
Okay. That's okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and again, I should have reminded everybody that the way we're structured now across the TTCs is that we and you all probably know this, we have a state program manager for each state. So we want to involve that person. I'm the one for Ohio, Gene's Michigan, and Scott is Illinois, and so forth. So again, we're always going to probably try to get that person involved in because they're working on projects and knowing what's going on in the state.
Yeah, this is Mark. I'm not from another state from Dontavius, but at least I'm about 3 blocks away from you.
Yeah.
I think one thing to look at, and we did this when we started our suicide prevention work in Ohio, was to do a gap analysis. And we found that in many communities were doing a lot of good stuff, but there weren't communities that were doing the full spectrum of activities that we really feel like we need to get the good results from.
Yeah.
So helping communities and others understand about how to do that gap analysis to identify the areas of strength and weakness, I think could be a real advantage in planning their suicide prevention activity.
Okay. That's really helpful. Thanks. Well, and I think, just even when I hear, they're not doing the full gamut of suicide prevention work, just to be able to lay that out, what is the full gamut of it? And because that's kind of, if we knew what the gaps were and we knew what the needs were, then, okay, then what do we provide as a TTC, a training and technical assistance center?
And Lou, let me add to that.
Where should we focus?
Let me add to that too. I think just from what Dr. Hurst said, figuring out or talking about who should be around the table is important as well, because we have so many community agencies, task forces, schools. I mean, like everyone is involved in this, and sometimes you could be missing a key partner that may be in your community that may not even recognize that they play a role. And so as you think about the gap, doing the gap analysis, talking about who should be around the table so you have a full continuum of supports and partners to actually address this issue holistically and throughout all of the various sectors. So,
yeah, is Julia on the call? Julia's our PTTC co-director.
Yep, I'm here.
Hey, what is this? Is gap analysis work in our states? Is that something that Chuck and Aaron could do or would do, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely talk with them and approach it. We haven't had that conversation other than, you know, going through our assessments.
Okay, well, I'm just, again, this whole suicide prevention issue really crosses obviously all three of our centers, and
absolutely, yep,
it's big enough for all of us to try to wrap our hands around it. But that might be a way to offer something to local communities, you know. And again, maybe there's a stepwise approach to that where we do sort of here's a 1-hour webinar about this is what a gap analysis is, and then we could invite communities to go to the next step or something before we again launch whatever we think might be appealing and give us good GIPRA numbers. Anybody else on the line that would like to share anything about this particular topic or their experience? We're approaching the end of our time together. I want to give everybody an opportunity. Anybody else? Okay. I will apologize to you all because we originally scheduled this meeting for May 2nd. It got bumped to May 23rd because I ended up taking a vacation. And so I am sorry for that, but we will try to maintain our schedule. Next month, it's on August 22nd, I believe, if we can see the next slide. There it is. Okay, August 22nd, 12 noon. And in the meantime, if you have any thoughts for us, or you just want to talk about ideas or training needs, technical assistance needs, please give me a call. Any final words?
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, and great. Really appreciate the discussion, particularly at the end there around, you know, suicide strategies and approaches. This is exactly what we really could really need from the advisory board, and all the work that's being done that we talked about in the first part of the call has really been stimulated in a large part due to this group. So thank you again.
All right, thank you all.
All right, see you later.
Bye.
Have a great holiday.
You too.